Hello everybody and welcome back to another video from scriptingisfun.com. We're going to be picking up where we left off with our platform game here, and in this video we're going to be adding some UI to our game. So what we want is we want a UI for our health, so as we're taking damage we can see that, and then we're also going to want to add some UI for lives as we kind of prepare for what happens if we run out of lives ending the game, and those kind of mechanics that we need to add into our game yet. So let's jump in and start with adding some UI to our screen. So I'm going to double click my canvas here so I can zoom out onto it. And so far all we have is this message text box in here that we're sending a message to as needed. But what I want to do is have a way to show health on the screen. So I'm going to add another text box, so UI text. I'm going to go ahead and put that text kind of up here in the top corner of the screen somewhere. Let's give that a top left anchor point, and then let's name this our health text, and then let's just have it put the word health in there, and then we can size that up a little bit with our font so that it kind of fits on the screen there, and let's give it a better color. So a lot of times we do kind of like a red maybe color for health, so let's try that. And this box can be a little smaller then, and I think that should be fine right there for our label. And then how I want to really represent our health is by using a slider. So we have a sliding health bar. So I'm going to go to my canvas, I'm going to add another UI. This time I want a slider. And then let's just move the slider right up here next to our health. So let's actually just kind of put it nice and close. Alright, now we're going to modify the slider here so that we can't like drag on the handle here or anything like that. So over in the inspector here for our slider, first of all we're going to uncheck interactable. We don't want to have the player be able to come up here and click on the slider and have it change value. So we're going to make it so it's not interactable. When we open up a slider UI element, you'll see that it's made up of a background, a fill area, and a handle slide area. The handle is this kind of knob right here, so we actually don't need that in this case. So I'm actually going to just delete the handle slide area. Alright, then I don't want it to start by having a partially filled bar, so we got to change a few things. So we're going to go into our fill area here, and we're going to change our rect transform here, so left is at 0, so that moves this side of the box back to the edge of the bar. We're also going to go to the right and we're going to put a 0 there. So now it's set to stretch to fill the whole entire bar, and then we want to get rid of this little part that's pre-filled, so we're going to open up the fill area and go to the fill itself, and you can see the fill currently has a width of 10. We're going to make that a 0. So now the fill area is here, it's ready to be stretched across the bar. So when I go to my slider and I go to the value here, this is what drives how much of the bar is visible, or how much of the fill is filling in the background. Right now it's at 0. As I drag that, you notice how the bar fills up. So when it's at 1, the bar is fully filled, and as it goes down, the fill area changes. Okay, so we've got the setup now for we're at 0. There's nothing showing. When we're at 1, it's all the way there. Okay, that's what we wanted. Alright, next we want to play with our different colors. So in the background, let's go ahead and set our background to a darker color. So here's how I can change the background color. So maybe we pick a kind of a blackish, grayish color like so for the background. And then let's go to our fill and let's give that a color. So let's go ahead and give that a nice bright red color. So now if I go to the slider and I change the value, you notice that when I'm full health we're all the way red. When we come down we get to the bottom here where it kind of goes to 0. Okay, so now we have this ability to control that. So then in our script we'll make sure that our health variable is tied to the value of the slider, and then as we change it we'll update the value of the slider, which will update how much of the health bar is filled in. Okay, so let's change the name here to Health Slider. It's always good to give good unique names to our UI elements so that we don't lose what we're doing here. Alright, so now we need to go into our player script. We need to make a link to this health slider as a variable, and then we can reach out to its value and we can make it match up to our health. In our player script, you can see we already have a public integer for health. That's what we're currently running our health off of. And now what we want is a link to our slider. Okay, so we're just going to put a variable here somewhere in our ever lengthening list of variables. We'll make this a public variable so we can work on it out in the inspector. This is going to be a slider like this. So this is part of the UI system. So when we have Unity engine.ui up here, we get access to things like our text here and our slider, and then we'll call this our health slider. Alright, we're going to go ahead and save that. Let's go out to Unity, and we just need to then attach the health slider to that variable. So we'll go to the player because he's got the script, and then down in our script now we have our slider variable here, and we're going to grab our health slider from the canvas, drag and drop it right here into the box. So now we have a link to our slider. We'll go back into our script. Now, for wherever we go to lose health, we're going to want to set our slider value to match. So when the game starts, we'll make sure that the value is set to 1. But wherever we take damage, right now we're taking damage only when we touch one of our aliens. So it's in our onCollisionEnter 2D function here. Every time we touch something tagged as an enemy, we're taking 5 away from our health. We're checking to see if we're dead, and we're doing our respawn and all that. So let's, after taking away our health, let's also, so that we don't get something weird happening with our slider, let's also make sure that health can never go below 0. So if we're below 0, let's just set health equal to 0, like so. And then at the bottom of this check here, let's go ahead and affect our slider value. So we're going to go to our health slider, and we want to say dot value. The value is the current value of the slider. That's what we want to change. All right, and we're going to set that equal to our health divided by the maximum our health can be, because we need to get a ratio here, because our slider value, here, let's go out and look at it. Our slider value is a number between 0 and 1. So if we go to our health slider, we look at value. See how the value is set to 0 and the max is 1? So we want to get a ratio or a percentage of what health we have left. So we're going to need to do a little math here. But to do this math, we need to know what our maximum health is. Right now, in our script, we just have one variable for health, and we're changing it. So we're going to need to make a variable at the top that's going to be for our max health, so that we can know what our percentage is out of, how many health points are we out of. So let's just type in max health for now, and we'll have to make that variable. Alright, so if we take our health and divide it by our max health, we'll get a number between 0 and 1, which will be a ratio of how much health we have left, or a percentage. So let's make this max health variable up at the top of our script here somewhere. So here's health. Let's go ahead and make a public int max health. And then we'll set that out in the inspector. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a health variable, a private variable now, because we don't want to have a different max health and a regular health. So we don't need this to be in our inspector anymore. We just want max health. That's what we're going to set. And then in our start function, what we will do is we will set our health equal to our max health. So that way, whatever we assign it out in the inspector as we're play testing, it'll just set that max health to our health, and we'll never actually change the value of our max health. All right, so now we have that set up. So now we'll have a value for max health, which will be our starting health. So maybe that's 100, maybe that's 10. It just depends on our scale. And then here's health here will be the one that we're actually changing to show our current health in the game. So then, if we come back down here for we were changing our slider value, health divided by max health will return us to that decimal number between 0 and 1, and we'll set our slider to that value. Let's save the script and go back out to Unity. Now we'll go to our player, and in his script we should have that max health variable here now. And let's go ahead and set our health to something like 100. Okay, so that's how much we have, is 100 health points. Then we're going to go to our slider, because our slider currently is showing no health. So let's go to the slider, let's go to the value, let's drag that up to a 1 so the game starts with it filled up. So we are going to have a bit of a problem here, because health and max health are integers. And if I divide an integer by an integer, I'm going to get an integer back. So let's go ahead and set our health and our max health to floats so that we can actually get a float answer back, and then we can put that float into our health value. So this is an example of sometimes you start with variables of one type and you realize later on that it would actually be helpful to have them a different type. So let's just go ahead and change health here to a float, and then let's go ahead and change max health to a float. And that way when we do the math down here, dividing a float by a float will give us a float number, and that's what this needs to be. This needs to be a float for the value. So let's save this. Let's go out into Unity. Let's make sure that our player still has the 100 in there for max health. So here it is. That's now a float number. And let's fix the slider here, because it's not sticking to the top of the screen there, because I didn't give it an anchor point that makes sense. So let's go ahead and drag this up here so that it's right next to my health variable here. And then we better give this an anchor point. Let's make a little more view here. See how it slid again when I changed my screen size? That's why it's important to set your anchor point. So let's go ahead and set that right there. Let's now go to the anchor point for our health slider, and let's anchor it to the same part of the screen as my health is. So health is anchored to the top left. Let's anchor this to the top left as well. Now if when we change screen sizes, they stay together. See that? They don't bounce away from each other. So that's why anchor points are important. Okay, let's test this out and see if our health slider drops when we run into an alien. So there's our buddy the alien up there. Let's jump up here and see if we can get hit by him. So let's just get hit. And there, you see how that took off 5 health points. It took my slider down a bit. And here he hit me a couple of times again. So every time we run into him, we're taking a hit on our health here. And that appears to be working just fine. Every time we get hit, we're doing that math to get the percentage of health we have of our max health, and we're changing our slider's value to reflect that. And 100 health is quite a bit of hits here, so for game balance we would probably need to give ourselves less health or make those aliens do a little bit more damage, because being able to be hit 20 times by him before he kills us is a problem. Alright, so now when we respawn, we see that our health didn't fill back up. Alright, so let's look at our variable here. Our player health is back to 100, but our health bar didn't fill back up. So we do have to make sure we take care of that as well on respawn. So let's look at our respawn function here. And then respawn, we're going back to current position. We're turning off the disabled. And we're going to have to make sure that our health gets set back to our max health, and that we set our slider value back. Okay, so let's go up here in our respawn. So we're going to reposition, but let's go ahead and do a few things here first. Let's go ahead and set our health back equal to our max health. So we got maximum health, and then let's go ahead and update our health bar. So we know this is going to go to max, so we can just go to our health slider, dot value, and we can just set that equal to a 1. And then that will fill that back up. So we'll do that, and then we'll save our script, back out to Unity again. Let's set our player's max health down to a lower number. Let's do maybe a 15. That way 3 hits of the enemy will cause him to die, and we can test this out. So what we want to see is that the health does jump down, and that when we respawn, the health gets filled back up. So let's do that. Here we go. Let's go get killed by an alien. Here we are. There's 1 hit, 2 hits, and 3 hits. And we respawn, we see our health bar fills back up, and we're good to go again. So that's adding the health to our UI. Let's also go ahead and institute some lives now. So in our script, let's make a variable here for lives, because we want to give the player a certain number of lives here, certain number of chances to complete the game. We're going to go ahead and set them back to their checkpoint when they die, but we don't want to give them an infinite number of tries here at our game. We want a little more challenge there. So we're going to make a, let's go here with float. Let's go here with our health. So let's just do a public int called lives. And then we can set that out in the inspector. And then we'll save our script. Let's go out to Unity. Let's set up a lives UI here in Unity. So we're going to click into our canvas, and let's make a new text box. We'll call this our lives text. And then we'll go find where it put that text box. There it is. So we have health there. We could just stack lives right underneath it. Let's see here. Let's get this set here underneath. Let's line it up here. There we go. And let's see, what size do we make our health text? Let's just kind of match this up. We made it size 26, so let's go ahead and do lives to the same. And then let's give it perhaps the same color even. So we'll go here and we'll just make it red. We'll make it say lives. And then we're going to display the number of lives we have left here in our text box. So let's just see if we can fit like a 2-digit lives in here. Looks like there's plenty of room in our box. We'll also, just to make sure, we can go here and tell it that it's okay for it to overflow horizontally in case we need to do that. And then we got to set our anchor point. Right now it's set to the center of our screen. So see how that dragged it up off the top? So let's just kind of line that up where we want it. And then let's set our anchor point to that top left corner. If all these have the same anchor point, they should all stay the same distance away from each other. Okay, so we can test that by just changing the size of our screen here. Now that we have our lives box positioned on the screen, let's go back into our script and let's start displaying lives. Alright, so we have our public int for lives here. We also now need to put in a text box for our lives text. So let's just pick a spot to put that in here. We'll put it right under our slider here. So let's make a public text. We'll call this our lives text. Then we'll save this, go out into Unity, and assign that through the inspector. So our lives text variable is right here. So let's grab our lives text from the canvas and drop that in there. And now we have established a connection to our text box. Going back to the script. Okay, so now we just need to display how many lives are currently available to us. So in the start function here, let's go ahead and put our initial amount of lives in here. So we'll say lives text equals lives, And then to the end of that, we will put on the actual number of lives that we have, like so. And then we can copy this line, because every time we lose a life, we're going to have to update. So let's go down to where we know we've lost a life, which is down here in our on collision enter, where we're checking for death. So now not only will we do all this, but we will go ahead and update our lives right in here. So if we run out of health, we'll set health back to 0. We'll update our lives text and so forth. Now we also have to take a life away from here as well. So here's where we're going to say lives minus minus, and we'll update those lives there. And then later on we'll have to tie some code in here for we're checking. So let's just put a note here for the future. We're going to check to see if we are out of lives. So that's something we'll have to do here after we take lives away, before we do our whole respawning type of thing here. But now we should have lives displaying and counting down. So let's save our script. Out here in Unity then, we will give ourselves some lives. So let's just give ourselves 3 lives here in our variable. And when we hit play, that should fill in into our lives text box. There we go. And then if we go lose a life, so let's run into our alien friend here a few times. Okay, lives drop down to 2, we respawn, health is back to 100%, and we can lose another life, lives is down to 1, so it looks like our lives are updating correctly. Okay, so in this video then, we have added in our health UI with the slider as a health bar, so we can see how much health we have left. We've also added in lives and the ability to display those on the screen. So that gets all of that UI taken care of. So that's going to be it for this video. As always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments below, and I'll get back to those as quick as I can. And have a great day.